All right, good day, everybody. Steve Prziborowski here. Welcome to episode 46 of Reach for the Firefighter Badge. Episode 46 is going to continue to build upon fire department oral interviews. This one will be Tips for Success, Part 5. If you haven't seen it by now, I've done a number of episodes related to fire department oral interviews, as well as a number of episodes coming up. The next few episodes will also focus on oral interviews. And as I've mentioned before, for most departments and most organizations for that matter, even non-fire department places, the oral interview is usually the number one way that you'll get your score, great or not so great. So it's usually the number one focus of how you're scored and whether you're going to get the job or not. So you got to be great at oral interviews. And if you're shy and you don't communicate well and you're not good around people, you're going to struggle. I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with that, but you've got to be able to overcome all those things to be the best you can be. As a reminder, my two websites have a lot of great free information on them, code3firetraining.com as well as chabotfire.com. Also, these two books are what these webinars are based upon. Lots of great information in each of them to help you be the best candidate you can be. And again, available off my websites. So we've talked about things to do way before the interview. We've talked about things to do right up to the interview and during the interview, but now we're going to talk about some more things to consider. Again, I'm not telling you what to do. I have an opinion like many others do. I'm just going to share my personal opinion that may or may not work for you in your situation. So take it or leave it. And just like you should be doing that, I encourage everyone to do, don't just listen to me. I'm not the expert in everything, but talk to as many as you can to see what the common opinions are based on their experiences, and then make your own choice. So we're in the interview now. So here's some considerations, some suggestions. Again, I'm not force feeding anything to you. So you're in the interview. Now, the oral board cannot legally ask you certain questions. They can't legally ask you certain questions. Now, is that saying that oral boards ask illegal questions? Well, unfortunately, sometimes they do. However, most human resource departments, personnel departments, or whatever the department or the city jurisdiction's human resources division is called, the folks that manage entry-level hiring, promotional hiring, and every division and department within the city or the jurisdiction, they usually train the oral board raters of, okay, you can say this, you can't say this, don't go there, you can go there. And they're not trying to be mean, they're trying to keep the department and yourself out of trouble, because unfortunately, there have been things even in the year 2020 that candidates have been asked, and it's just not a good situation when, things are usually fine when someone gets the job. It's when someone doesn't get the job, doesn't get the promotion, then they bring up the fact of, well, they asked me about this or that, and they shouldn't have done that. Don't go there. You don't need to know that information. So some of the things that they cannot legally ask you, they can't legally ask you your age. And I'm only speaking from California experience, and I'm not an attorney. I'm not a human resources expert, just some guy that's been in the fire department for over 28 years in various positions, and I've gained some information that I want to share. So take it or leave it. I'm not a legal expert, but typically most applications today, they're not even going to ask your date of birth for fear of discrimination. So they won't ask it. Don't volunteer it. They're not going to be able to legally ask you about your race, your religion, national origin, sex, medical conditions or disabilities you may have, sexual orientation. So given that, these are I'm not saying they don't happen. You may get asked these questions, don't get me wrong. And I say that because not every fire department has a proctor in the room. And as I've mentioned, the role of the proctor is not just to get you from the front lobby into the room, loosen you up and make sure you stick to the time, and then get you back outside and thank you very much for taking the time to test with our department. The proctor is also there to make sure that the raters don't ask any illegal, unethical questions. In most departments, the raters have to stick to the script, meaning I mentioned earlier in one of the previous episodes, sometimes we do 11 questions in 35 minutes. Well, what that means is that every candidate has to be asked the same question in the same way. The panel cannot deviate. So if we interview 100 people, they all need to hear the questions in the exact same manner. So the only times a board member can maybe ask a question of you is typically maybe if it's a clarifying question because they didn't understand. Let's say you said, well, I'm a member of Gobbledygook Association and blah, blah, blah. An oral board member may ask, I've never heard of Gobbledygook Association. Can you please explain that to me? Oh, it's this. Okay, it's a clarifying question. on the flip side as well, anything you say is fair game. So be careful about things you may throw out there, because then again, it may backfire. So again, we're not legally able to discriminate against you, but don't give the board ammunition. I can't speak for other departments, but don't give anyone ammunition. I know you may be proud of any of these things, but don't give the board ammunition. Again, they shouldn't be discriminating against you, but it's the weird world we live in today, where unfortunately, sadly, discrimination and harassment still occurs. Don't ask me why or how, but it does, even with all the training and the knowledge that we have, you'd think. But anyway, they can't ask you those things, so don't volunteer the information. Don't apologize for things. Focus on the positive. And I say that I'm a glass half full guy, not glass half empty guy. I remember one of our great captains, he's a great guy, but I remember in his interview, I think he was like 21 years old. He was brand new. He hadn't taken many interviews. And I remember we asked him a question, this is years ago. He's a great guy and he's turned out to be an awesome captain, probably make a great chief at some point if he wants to promote up. But I remember he looked, I mean, he was 21, but he looked about 12. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, he obviously met the age requirements to take the test, because at the time we asked for, date of birth. And we still do check licenses, and that's not to discriminate. It's just to make sure you are who you are, because there's the chance that someone may send somebody to take their interview. Say it isn't so. But anyway, I remember him in his interview, he's going, well, because we asked him the first opening statement question. So tell us how you prepared for the position of firefighter in the way of, like life experience and whatever else. And I remember him going, well, I'm actually pretty green. I really don't have a lot of experience. I'm sorry to tell you that. So I really apologize that I really don't have any experience to offer you. And it's like, and I wish I could just stop the interview and tell the guy, dude, just shut up. Don't focus on what you don't have. Focus on what you have. And I hear that a lot of times. Well, I don't have a lot of my, okay, stop the record here. Instead, this is what I do have. So focus on what you do have, as little as you may think it is. This is what I do have, because as soon as you start saying, I don't have a lot of experience, you're going to make the panel believe that. So don't apologize for things. It is what it is. Even if they're your fault or not your fault, don't apologize. Obviously, if you did something stupid, take accountability and responsibility by raising your hand and said, my apologies. There are times, but for your background history, unless it was illegal, obviously it was something like you got arrested for, again, which we legally can't ask you on a job application in California. And obviously in an interview, they're not going to ask you about that, but just try not to apologize. Instead, this is what I do have. Some of the things, like I've had some candidates, well, I'm very young, or even I'm very older in life. I'm not sure if that'll make a difference. Again, it don't matter. The oral board should not know your age in most departments. And even if they do, they shouldn't discriminate against you. And I know some departments, I hear this from candidates, well, I'm testing with XYZ department. I hear they like to hire older guys, I'm 31, 33, do I stand a chance? Or I hear they prefer a younger guy. Don't even get yourself wrapped around that axle there. Every department is different, and you can't believe everything you hear. Now, a certain department may have a tendency to hire younger people for whatever reason. Maybe that's all who applies, or not just applies, but does great at the oral interview process. Or maybe they tend to hire only more seasoned, experienced individuals, not old, seasoned, experienced. And maybe it's because of their age. Maybe it's because they interview well. Maybe because they just think about this. Maybe because they came to their oral interview very mature, with a lot of life experience that they can offer the department, and versus someone that doesn't. So don't worry about age. Don't apologize for it. Don't apologize for your lack of education, lack of experience. I love when candidates, well, I really didn't have the time to visit a firehouse. Now, again, most departments, I don't know of any departments actually that ask you a specific question of, have you visited firehouses? But be prepared to answer it, and hopefully you at least can say you've done some visits. But it's like, why are you volunteering this information? I haven't had time to research. I'm young. I don't have a lot of schooling. I don't have a lot of experience. Think about that. Put yourself in the oral board. What do you have? Then, why are you wasting our time? Again, we wouldn't say that, but, I only had time to visit one firehouse. Instead of that, say, this is what I do have. I had a chance to visit. Now, if it's the Los Angeles Fire Department with 100+ firehouses and you only had the time to visit one firehouse, personally, it's pretty weak. But you know what? Does it make you any worse or better than anybody else? No. Does it show you're more committed? Or Do you want that job? I'd question maybe how bad you want the job if you've only visited one firehouse. But again, that's just me. But again, the way to spin that in the proper way without saying anything illegal, unethical, or without lying. How you prepared yourself? Well, besides my education training experience, I've also had I had the time to visit Station 16 on the B shift. I spent a lot of time down there. I got to meet not just one crew, but I stopped by at not just C shift, but also B shifts. I had a chance to meet different crews, pick their brains on different things, blah, blah. Moving on to the next subject. Again, perfect, but well, I only visit one. I know there's 99 other firehouses. Positivity. Watch your ums, ahs, etc. One of the things you're getting graded on that we'll discuss in one of the future episodes is oral communication skills. Watch the newscasters. I've shared that before and I'll share it again. You want to watch and learn from good, solid communicators, watch newscasters. The typical people on nationwide news, your local news, evening, daytime, whatever, lunchtime, they usually will never say ums or ahs. Yeah, I know they're reading off a teleprompter, but still you rarely hear that because they train themselves to try to stop. Because think about it, what are these words? When someone says ah, whatever, they're filler words. It's like, so Steve, tell us about a time in your life when you had to mediate a dispute. A question you may get asked. People only say that just to sort of buy time. Shit. You're digging a hole. Versus pause. It's okay to, maybe give me a second to think about that, please. Sure, what are we gonna do? Say no, as long as you stay within your time, you're good. Okay, now I got it. Now I got a perfect episode. All right. You asked, name a time in my life when I had to mediate a dispute. Well, one time while I was attending Chabot College to get my 2-year degree, in one of our fire technology classes, 2 classmates actually sort of got into a little tiff about, I don't know what it was at the time. They laughed about it afterward and we all joked about it, but at the time they got into a little tiff. And I tried to be the voice of reason because they're our teammates, because we are all in different teams. And I tried to break it up, and I did break it up, and I tried to let cooler heads prevail, blah, 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 and everything else. But know yourself so well, don't be so quick to blurt out stuff. Be able to just, when you find that time where you need to think for a little bit and you need to pause, instead of pausing, instead of saying, just pause. But here's the thing with communication, doesn't silence suck? Think about that. When you're in a relationship and you get your significant other, boyfriend, girlfriend, whoever, just gives you the silent treatment. Or even worse, that's bad enough as it is. But imagine now being on the oral board and you got 3 board members and the proctor all doing this. We're not trying to jam you up, but we're waiting for an answer. We're not going to be mean about it, but silence is just, it's not golden. Trust me, when you're on the hot seat, it's like, oh shit, I got to say something. So, and that's what happens with and you just start stumbling upon yourself. You got to be a great communicator. So there's ways to train yourself. I've mentioned before, take speech classes, join Toastmasters, practice in front of groups. Make sure your edit feature is working. When I say edit feature, I know there's conversation you may have around family members or friends that you wouldn't say around maybe a fire chief, or maybe, I don't know what, or maybe your mother. Things you may say amongst your friends, you may not say in front of your mother or father or grandmother or grandfather or whoever. You got to have an edit feature. Now you should be pretty consistent, but if you are one of those people that maybe uses foul language, as unfortunately I do on occasion, you can't be doing that stuff in an interview. But unfortunately, I've seen candidates, and I've heard stories. I remember one of our instructors at the college was just telling us a story about his department. He goes, we gave this candidate a question and they just did not have an answer. And instead of just saying, can we just come back to that one later on? The candidate kept doing, you asked me, repeat the question again. Yes, tell us about a time when you did this. The candidate was doing this. And apparently the candidate got so frustrated, and I guess he forgot the Raiders were in there. He just goes, well, fuck me. And it's like, I remember my friend goes, all of us are going, did he just say fuck me in the middle of the, yeah, he's apparently in his own zone trying to find an answer to the question. He's so his edit feature was not even working. And again, it's like, holy crap, he just said fuck me in an interview. And again, you got to have an edit feature. Look at today, in today's world, especially with social media, the internet, the amount of people that are getting themselves in trouble. the amount of people that are getting fired from their jobs, demoted from their jobs, suspended, or just disciplined, all because of maybe things they said or they wrote down. You know, whether you said it through your mouth or you said it via a keyboard, you got to have an edit feature, since some need it more than others. You know, some examples of where you need an edit feature. We don't want slang terminology. For example, paramedic versus medic. Medic is slang for paramedic. So be very careful about using slang terms. I mean, again, it's proper English communication. So paramedic. Be gender neutral. Firefighter, not fireman. Staffing, not manning. You know, we have four-man engines. I love when I hear people say, we have four-man engines. Okay, well, I see two females on that engine and then two males. So, well, a woman, you know, woman is the end of, you're digging yourself a hole. You got to be gender neutral in today's world. And because to me, if you're saying these things like fireman, that's telling me that you're sort of, number one, disrespectful potentially. You're potentially clueless, because in the year 2020, I know there's probably a few departments out there that still use the term fireman officially, meaning on their job title in their job descriptions, but that's got to be rare. Most departments call them firefighters. I know verbally a lot of firefighters still use the term fireman, and I'm not going to get into that discussion, but when you're in an oral board right in front of a potential supervisor, think about it. Your future captain, that's going to be your supervisor, who wants you to be low maintenance. Last thing he or she needs, especially if it's a she, is you to be, fireman, manning. Those terms are sexist and unprofessional in today's world. Without you know, talking about this subject a lot, you may say fireman around your friends, but you better not be saying it in an oral interview, because again, it shows that you're clueless about your audience, especially if there's, say, a female in front of you. Now, think about that. Let's say there's no female, even let's say there's just three males. Don't get lulled into a false sense of security, because some people say, well, they're three males, so I can say fireman because they're not. Well, first of all, you don't necessarily know, do you? Plus, you never know how people think. You never will know. How do you not know that one of those, if not more of those people, say, well, that's pretty clueless and offensive and, you know, sort of sexist or inappropriate to say fireman. Why does he think, well, because I'm hanging around with a bunch of guys? You can't assume that. Just like, oh, they're my buddies, I can tell this joke, you know, no one, you know, they don't mind, they won't get offended. You never know. So have an edit feature. Another thing that sort of drives me crazy when you ask a question and the candidate gives their answer, and the oral board, you know, oral board's either writing things down, what you're saying, or they're looking at you. And again, silence and staring is, as a candidate, you just go, oh my God, I gotta say something more. And what usually comes out of candidates' mouths after they answer the question is, so did that answer the question? Okay, we can't give you an unfair advantage. So the answer you're usually gonna get is, I don't know. Did you think it answered the question? Well, I just wanna make sure to answer in your eyes. I can't tell you that, because if I tell you that, that's gonna lead you down a false sense of security. You know, just like an oral board oral board members should not be saying, all right, yeah. Don't get wrapped around that axle either, because I have a lot of candidates sometimes go, yeah, the oral board is smiling at me and giving me a thumbs up. All right, good answer, blah, blah. Just because they're saying that doesn't mean they're giving you 100% or 90% scores. That may be a 70% answer, or they may be saying that to everybody. Or just because they're looking at you and not showing any emotion. I mean, there are some of those people that just showed no emotion on the board, and it freaks candidates out going, God, they didn't like me. No, that's just the way they are probably to everybody. Don't take it personal. I mean, be yourself. Engage every audience member, give them eye contact, whether they're smiling at you, nodding at you, or just mad dogging you, or not even looking at you. Give everyone the fair treatment that you would expect, because you never know what their true motives are. But don't ask stupid questions. It's almost like, hey, that's a great question. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock, it's a great question. That's probably why we're asking it. I mean, again, we want to have a connection and a sense of humor, but try not to overuse things like, that's a great question. Of course it is. Don't abruptly end your answers. A lot of candidates, they just go off and ramble and they tell stories, and sometimes they talk for a minute or two or three, and then as the oral board are trying to take notes, then all of a sudden they stop, and as an oral board, we stop writing. We look at them, and of course, silence sucks, and then they start talking again, and then I start writing. And then what do they do when they stop talking? I look at them because you got nothing to say. Then it's like, and sometimes we have to look at candidates. Are you done? Or because maybe they're doing this still or thinking. So be able to answer questions so we know there's an end to it. And I'll talk about one of the future episodes, how to answer questions, sort of like how you write maybe a term paper or a report to make sure there's a good introduction, body, and conclusion. That may help you. Don't immediately blurt out your answers. Pause, or pregnant pause is sometimes the term is called. So Steve, tell us what your greatest strength is. Well, my greatest strength is, okay. It's almost like you knew the answers that you were, did you hear the questions from somebody else? I mean, that happens sometimes, and you don't want to be that type of person. It's always good to just take a pause. All right, you asked what was my greatest strength? Well, let me explain. And again, pausing, I'm a fast talker, so I have to catch myself, self-awareness, knowing a problem is half the battle, doing something about the other. But while I have many great strengths to offer, let me focus on my number one strength, which is whatever. So if you blurt out your answers, you run the risk of maybe not hearing the question because you're thinking too much about what you think the answer is. It's been amazing where I've said as a rater, well, this is a multiple part question, bear with me. And I go, okay, first part of the question is, blah, 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 blah. And then I pause for a second because I'm trying to let them digest it so I don't cram them full of info. And then the candidate starts going, blah, blah, and I'm like, I'm still reading the second part of the question. Oh, I'm sorry, Chief. No, my bad. No, that's okay. So pause is okay. Don't overuse. That's a good question, as I touched on. I mean, it's okay to maybe say it once, but use it sparingly because, of course, they're good questions. That's why we're asking them. I'm not saying they're perfect questions, but don't ramble, just get to your point and be detailed. And I think one of the best ways to do that is to rehearse your answers. I've shared previously most common oral interview questions. And there are no trick questions. Seriously, if you've done your homework and prepared for becoming a firefighter and understanding the process, there are no trick questions. They may be just asked in different ways. So the best thing you can do is once you have common questions down is take a tape recorder and record yourself, whether it's using a computer, whether it's using your smartphone or something else, I don't know, have someone ask you questions, or maybe you just have the questions down, ask them to yourself, repeat out the answers, and then more importantly, time yourself. Wow, that was a 5.5 minute answer. Yeah, you probably don't want to use a 5.5 minute answer. Try to get it down below probably 3 minutes, unless it's the opening statement, maybe 3 to 4 minutes, but everything else, keep it below 3. Or, wow, that was a 15-second answer. Yeah, probably maybe need add a little substance, but have that edit feature to know when you're rambling and you're losing them. So as we close out this episode, don't forget, fire departments don't hire resumes. They hire people. People that can connect with the oral board members and demonstrate they'll be a good fit for their department. Your personality and your character traits, among other things, will be your keys to success or failure. And nothing personal, and you can't take it personal because you could take 100 tests in 100 different departments. You may only get 1 or 2 job offers out of everything, but hey, 1 or 2 job offers is better than none. But odds are the key is you can't expect 100% perfection or job offers from every department because, again, each of our departments have slightly different cultures. And again, depending on who's in the room rating you, could be different for the day. So do the best you can, be yourself more importantly. So in closing, my contact information, social media stuff, as always, thank you very much for the gift of your time. Until the next episode, and we continue talking more about oral interviews, be safe, be well, and we'll see you soon.